Lately, I've been thinking a lot about how we make decisions. And I have been doing therapy for a lot of years. I've talked to a lot of people, and I actually think our intuition is a lot worse than we're giving it credit for. So, a lot of times I'll hear, I know something's not right. I know something's off. I know something bad's going to happen. And 9.9 times out of 10, nothing bad happens. And I think that we've kind of like overinflated the ability of our intuition to guide us, and we've turned it almost into a psychic power versus like a helpful reminder. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about intuition as a helpful reminder and how we can use intuition versus a psychic hit. And this also really helps us make better decisions and stay more connected in our relationships. So, the reason we don't want to use intuition as something psychic is because often our intuition is guiding us in a direction to try something else. It's a nudge, it's a reminder. It's not a directive, if that makes sense. And so I might feel like, oh, something's off. And then I want to look at like what's off versus like something's off. This is not good for me. I say that because oftentimes something might be off and it means I need to examine something different. I need to look at something different. I need to research something a little more. I need to try something, but yet I don't have the whole answer to make the decision. So if I'm just making a decision based off a hunch, I'm basically gambling. I'm basically just using psychic powers to figure it out. So I say this a lot because people will say, um, let's give an example. I feel really overwhelmed and I don't know what will help. And so I'm going to do X thing. Like, I guess I'm just going to like move, or I guess I'm just going to hire this a nanny. And it's like, well, maybe if you're feeling really overwhelmed and you know that things aren't going well, you could just start testing some things. Like everyone's trying to get to the final answer versus to immerse themselves in the scientific process of how we get to a decision. A decision is something we want to come to based on what's happening versus something we want to psychically, intuitively know. So example, I'm feeling really like I am at the end of my rope with my three kids, and it's been taking a toll on me, trying to do all the things. And so I started with the truth. The truth is, this isn't working. And call it intuition, call it logic. It's not working. I know it's not working. So I need to figure out how to make this work. So I have 10 things it could be. But even I started falling into the trap of like, well, I know the answer. This is the answer. This is what needs to change. But I started kind of testing some theories. What if this changed? What if that changed? I started playing around with it, looking at the data, looking at what could happen. And the interesting thing as I was doing that was I realized the answer was different than what I thought. And it was something that I had to come to that I didn't know from the beginning. And so I find people really hesitant to try things on, and I find them really wanting to know the answer. And we can't know the answer without trying things on. It's like, I don't want to go in the dressing room. I'm just gonna throw it in my car and I'm sure it'll fit. It's my size. It never fits right. Like that rarely works, but big life decisions, we're just like, I'm not trying it on. I'm just throwing something on. And this is something I'm coming to talk about for parenting, relationships, career, ourselves, our self care. Like, I want everyone to start trying things on. The answer is going to come in 10 steps, not in one moment of brilliance. If the answer comes in one moment of brilliance, that's amazing. But generally, that moment of brilliance doesn't come until we've tried a few things and we have a little bit more clarity and orientation to what's happening. So, if you're willing to try things on, you might be like, I'm feeling really overwhelming. I'm feeling like my partner's not supporting me enough. My mind is an extreme, is like, well, I guess I just don't want to be with them because they're clearly not helping and they're clearly not supportive and this clearly is not working out. So I just need to be done. And maybe that's the answer. But we have to start with the problem. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, I could test on this thought of throwing them out. So maybe I need a weekend where they go away and I do it myself and I test. Is it really easier? Then I have more data. Actually, it was easier when they were gone. Okay, let's try a week. How does a week feel? If it's still easier, maybe they are the problem. That's really good data. But maybe it's harder. Maybe it's worse. Maybe it totally sucked. And then you realize, like, oh, that's not the solution. The problem has remained the same, and that wasn't the solution. So let me try on the next thing. Maybe I need a house cleaner. Maybe it's the house tasks that are overwhelming me. Okay, I hire a cleaner. Do I feel better? I guess that was the problem. Do I not? Guess that wasn't the problem. So then I hire a weekend babysitter. Maybe I need a few hours on my own on the weekend. Let me hire a sitter. Did it help? Did it not help? Like we want our life, we want to be testing theories. If we're already thinking about our life as testing theories, it gives us so much space to move, grow, and pivot because we're always just testing a theory. My ego's not wrapped up in it. My ability to make good choices isn't wrapped up in it. I am an experimenter, experimenting and testing theories. The problem is, if we think we know the answer, our ego gets connected to our ability to discern truth and answer, and it doesn't want to be wrong. Because if we're wrong, we start to question our ability to do that in all areas, and it's very threatening. So it's better to be right and actually wrong than to admit we're wrong. If we're going from the standard, I know the answer, I know the path, I am committed to knowing what this is, it really puts us in a kind of lose-lose situation if we're wrong. Because I have to keep going with what's wrong because I said it, or I have to admit I'm wrong and then face myself doubting every other decision and my decision abilities. So you can do that, but I just recommend not even going there. Go from a place of I'm testing a theory, I'm testing a hypothesis, I'm seeing what works, I'm seeing what doesn't work. All I know is that something's not working, but because I'm not a psychic, I can't know what it is. I think of this with divorce a lot. I think it's interesting because if you think about divorce, it starts with this idea I'm done. And a lot of times you talk about it so much, and you can talk yourself into it or out of it, but you don't actually test it till you're done, right? So, it's like, okay, I'm sick of feeling unsupported. I'm going to get divorced. I'm done with this relationship. I don't want anything to do with it. And then you talk yourself into that. You go through the whole process. And then by the time y'all are separated, it's already done. And that's why I really love this idea of let's test some things out before we get so attached to the answer. And I'm not saying divorce isn't the right answer. I'm not saying extreme measures aren't the right thing, but I'm saying before we take those, we shouldn't get so wrapped up in what the right answer is before we test out some little steps. And so we always want to be trial and error, trial and error, trial and error while we figure out what is going on. That happened in my life recently where I decided, okay, I'm not feeling supported. Something needs to change big. And so I was thinking about all the things that I could do to change what was happening. And I had these theories and these thoughts. What do I need? What do I need? Blah, blah, blah. And then as I'm trying things, and my husband went out of town, it was just like for work, it was a serendipitous thing. And I realized, oh my gosh, what I'm asking of him, the support I'm asking of him, what I'm requiring from him, he can't give me. We need a third person. We had an au pair before. I'd like been done with au pairs. I'm like, we need an au pair. The answer isn't subtracting or putting more of a burden on him or being bitter and angry at him. What I need is some help in a time that neither of us are able to do it. So I need to bring an au pair back in. But I kind of got so committed to the fact that like my husband needs to change and he needs to do this and he's the problem. I was starting down that track and I saw where that track was going. And it's like him being gone was the best thing that could have happened because in that moment, it had nothing to do with him. He was at work. It was a pre planned trip. Like he was not the problem in that moment. And him not being there as the target of my kind of annoyance allowed me to see the problem for what the problem really was. And the problem really was, I don't have enough help. And he could be gone and out of the picture, and we could be splitting time. So, yeah, I'd have some more of my own time, but it still wouldn't help me with how do I get three kids from point A to point B. And he could change jobs and do something different and be there, but it still would then just stress both of us out because it's neither of our natural ability to do all of this on our own. And so it just really helped. But again, it was that process of when I hold on to something so tightly, I start to only see one possibility. And then I start to tunnel vision on that. And then I kind of run down that path. When I'm open and I'm holding the question, knowing that I need an answer, but I don't know what the answer is, well, then I allow different possibilities to come in. When I allow myself to try things before assessing them, with couples, I see this all the time. I'll say, try to get a cleaner, try to get a sitter. Well, my partner doesn't want that. They don't want someone else in the house. They don't want a sitter. They don't think we need it. I'm like, are they a psychic? I'm not a psychic. You're not a psychic. They're not a psychic. Get a sitter. Try it for a weekend, then discuss. I want in our relationships this language to start being used more. Let's try this out, and then we'll talk about it. I have an idea. Let's try it, then assess it. That's all of our life. I have a theory. Let's test the theory. Let's not try to think about it when we're not testing it. Because you might get that weekend sitter, and again, you both hate it, you think it's terrible, and you're like, yep, that wasn't it. You might get that cleaner and be like, that wasn't it. I'm not saying the answer is the cleaner or the sitter, but I'm saying you don't know it until you've tried it. And here's how I look at support in life. How I look at support in life, because I'll see this all the time in my practice. Someone will be overwhelmed, burnt out in their relationship, feeling off. Let's try one thing. That one thing doesn't work, nothing will work. I'm discouraged, nothing's going to work. So I want you to think of support like this. This is a gross example, but it's the best example. Magnesium. You don't know how much magnesium you need until you try it. So magnesium, you take it. Your body will absorb it. And then when you don't need it anymore, you poop it out. And that's how you know that you have reached the max dose, and then you back off. But if you're just taking magnesium in a standard dose and you're super deficient in magnesium, you're not going to see many effects from it because you're still not getting what you needed from it. And so that's when I want you to look at support. If you're super burnout and deficient, you're going to need a lot more support to feel better than someone who's already in a good place and just needs a little bit. And so when I look at support and we're feeling burnt out and overloaded, when we're feeling under supported in a certain area, I want you to do all the things, get to a place where you're feeling amazing, and then back off. This isn't, let me try a cleaner, that didn't help. No, we're doing a cleaner, a sitter, a date night, massage weekly. We're doing all the things. Then when you feel great, maybe we don't need a cleaner every week. Maybe you don't need to go to therapy every week, maybe every other week, maybe, but go all in until you're good and then start dropping things. I see people too much testing one thing at a time and then getting discouraged. We want to do a lot of things, get you to a good place, and then start assessing, do I need it or not? When I'm in my moments of struggle and frustration and disappointment, it's amazing how quick my mind goes to subtraction. I need to get rid of something. I need to blame someone. I need to make this like really intense statement about someone else, about myself. And I need to just get rid of. And I think the most healing thing for me lately is to think of it different. When I'm in those moments of strain and struggle, how I'm starting to think of it as what do I need to add? Do I need to add in more compassion for myself, for my partner? Do I need to add in more support in a way I might not have been thinking? And a big thing that I've so helpful to add in is space and silence to not feel so alone. And it's amazing, like you think that silence would make you feel alone. But I found that space and silence to feel like I'm receiving guidance and inspiration for a source beyond me has probably been the most helpful part of the formula or recipe for me. It's having that time to just be in the I don't know and to be holding the I don't know and allowing that I don't know, and then to allow inspiration to come to me. So it's like a psychic where you're knowing things, but I think of it so different. It's more, I'm open to receiving correction and direction. And we can think of that from our wise self, our highest self, from God. But it's those moments that have really shaped and allowed me to find my way and find my footing. Because my ego wants to charge forward, or my brain has all the answers. And it's those little whisper voices that often help me to know if I'm on the right track, if I need to go over a direction. And so I think it's so easy to get caught up in looking online for the answer. And I'm telling you, it's so amazing to me how I swear the universe will bring me the answer in a Facebook reel or in a friend's conversation. Like, it's not that that doesn't happen, but that all happens when I'm in the space of I don't know. Because when I'm in the space of I know, or I have to figure this out, I feel like I've decreed an order over the world that I've got this. And the minute I surrender and I'm like, I don't know, I'm always amazed what meets me in the place of I don't know. And so I think if you're in that space of I don't know, if you're in that space of wonder and confusion, feeling like it's beyond you, I feel like often that's a place of such disappointment and such uh, blame in ourselves. Like, how don't I know? Especially in parenting, in partnership, in life. How did I get here? It can feel like such a defeating space. And I've started to see that space as such a powerful space of surrender and such a powerful space of being receptive to things that maybe I would have been more closed to before. And so I just encourage you, if you're in that space of defeat, to start seeing it potentially a little bit different, where it's like my ego has been defeated. And once my ego has been defeated, that's the moment that my higher self can step in and help guide me in a way that's bigger than the way I'm thinking, in a way that's better than what I would have come up with. Because I find that our ego is very limited in the answers and the solutions that are acceptable. And I find that once I'm at the end of that, that's where the true guidance and true inspiration can come from. And again, that process a lot of times is a humbling process. And a lot of times that process is a slower process. And it's a lot less sexy than having a good idea and claiming it. It's a lot more like navigating with the stars. You have to wait till night. On cloudy nights, sometimes you just have to rest. You're dependent on what you're seeing. It doesn't feel as clear as the GPS. Our ego's the GPS that's just kind of barking orders and has the clear ending and the clear destination, and it knows the roads. And when you're navigating by star, you're going off road and off map, and you're really just vulnerable to the elements and trusting this path. And a lot of us have kind of misled ourselves almost by only following our GPS. And it's worth sometimes trying and considering where I'm trying to get, not on a map. So that's the place of surrender, right? Like, I've plugged in all the destinations I know, and I'm not getting to where I need to be. Maybe logically enough, but spiritually, it's my soul is not feeling what I'm craving, that peace that I'm craving. And I need a different kind of guidance. It's not going to come from the GPS. And so when we switch over to navigating by star, sometimes, again, it's step by step. And it's piece by piece. And it's one unclear guidance over another that over time gets you and it makes sense as you go. But again, that process happens. And this is more, we'll talk about intuition. Intuition is not a psychic knowing of the end. Intuition is a sacred process of being led step by step, moment by moment. And it's a lot of resting and it's a lot of waiting and it's a lot of just going blind. But we can surrender to that process we end up, I think, getting to that more soulful place we're searching for. And when we're listening more by sight, we get to a very physical destination, but often the physical destination doesn't hold what we're looking for in that spiritual, soulful. I think it's easy in our relationships to spend a lot of time annoyed or disappointed in our partners. And I don't think we talk about that a lot because I think we often want to talk about like how much we love our partner and how great they are and how amazing. And on Facebook, you're not like, well, I mean, if you do on Facebook, be like, I'm really annoyed at that person. Everyone's like, too much. So this isn't like a side of relationships we really see publicly. But I really think, like personally, internally, it's really hard to rectify the person we married, the fantasy, the hopes, the dreams of the person we married with the reality of who they are and who we are and how they show up in different phases of life. And so I think with kids, oftentimes what's happening right now is that, especially with dads, all that kind of love and attention they gave to their partners, they transfer to the kids. And then you're left feeling like, where's this person that I want to be with? Where's this person that I love? And where'd they go? And just feeling kind of left out in that. And men can say the same thing. Women's focus goes to the kids and it goes away from the relationship. And so I think it's important to acknowledge like it is a part of a long-term relationship that you're going to have disappointment, that you're going to have resentment. Everyone's like, don't have resentment. I'm like, I think that's just part of being in a relationship and being alive. Like there's certain things that are just going to hit us differently. We don't want to stew in it. We don't want to live in it. But again, it's okay to acknowledge. It's okay to see it. It's okay to name it for yourself. Like, I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. But I also feel like one of the best forgiveness prayers I've ever heard or sayings I've ever heard is from Louise Hay. And it says, I forgive you for not being who I wanted you to be. And I think actually in relationships, if we want healthy relationships past a certain point, there has to be a moment where we're just ready to forgive them for not being who we wanted them to be. And acknowledge that and then kind of move on. And I think for so long, I, in my own marriage, thought my husband would be different or changed, or, there was this kind of, I don't want to say second act or other part, but I thought there was like, and then this thing happens. And it was hard to kind of realize like, this thing isn't going to happen. This is who he was. Who he was when I married him and who he is now is the same person. And it's not going to change. And I think there was a lot for a long time of resistance to that, disappointment, hurt, annoyance, frustration. All those things were there when I think about that fantasy. And I think what's on the other side of that fantasy is the freedom almost of knowing, like, oh, that was never who he said he'd be. That was always who I said he'd be. I have to let go of who I said he'd be so they can be with who he is. And then maybe you realize, like, I actually don't want to be with this person because who they are isn't who I wanted. And I think that's important to name for yourself and them. Because it's not fair to be in relationships with people where we're constantly punishing them for not being the fantasy of who they should be. But there's also a space where it's like, if that's not who you are, let me get to know who you are. And then let me actually see how our strengths and weaknesses come together. And so with my husband, he has ideas of starting things. And he has this amazing brain power and these amazing skills that I just don't have. And so for so long, I'm like, you're going to do something with that. And you're going to be something with that. And this is going to be amazing. And every time I tell him ideas about what he could do with it, he'd get overwhelmed and shut down. And then I'd get frustrated because I'd feel like you're killing all my ideas and I see what could happen and you're not letting me do what I want to do with it. And he's like, you're pushing me too far. And so there's this constant tension. He's happy along his path. He has his path. And I'm not happy with his path. I'm trying to pull him forward. And this doesn't create a great dynamic. And so finally, I'm like, so this is the two things I want to say that's really important here. Finally, I said, I see you. I see you and I get it. And also, I need you to move a little bit forward for me. You don't have to come all the way, but I do need a little bit more because I can't keep making up the difference to get, like, if my life I want is 100 and I thought you'd be at 50 and I'd be at 50. Well, right now you're at 20 and I'm at 80. And that is not sustainable for me. I don't want to keep living that life. But I also have to acknowledge that you coming that extra 30 is going to be different. And it's going to look different than what I think. And then I have to get a little bit creative. How do we combine the areas we're strong and weak to make up some of that difference versus me putting it all on you or all on me? That's kind of where that partnership comes in. Okay, I'm over functioning, you're under functioning. We need to be in our own lanes and doing our own thing, but there's going to be a gap in our marriage, in our life, and how we're parenting and how we're living and how we're doing relationships that only can be filled if the two of us come together and to find the solution. It cannot be done with each people working on their own. And that's what marriage is about. It's about I got this part and you got that part, and there's a part we're going to have to join together to reach the fullness of this relationship. And a lot of us are never reaching the fullness of what our marriage could be because we're so busy either doing too much or too little. And so we got to start looking at our relationships. Where am I going overboard? Where are you going underboard? And what is the union, the joining, where we can then expand? Because I will tell you, and I've done it, me expanding on my own doesn't get me there. Me expanding on my own gets me to resentment and independence. It doesn't get me to interdependence. And so I've had to kind of step back and look at where am I missing the opportunity for interdependence? Because I'm so busy being independent. And where am I ignoring who he is, disrespecting who he is, because I want to be who I am? And where is he letting me take on more than I need to take on? And where's that middle ground? What can we join in so that we can build something really special that can only be built with the two of us and with both of our unique skills coming together?